Every 10 years, we will lose 5% of the brain. When Einstein died, there was a pathologist who wanted to steal his brain. He wanted to understand what is happening in his brain, To his surprise, there was nothing extraordinary which was found in Einstein's brain. All of us are born with the exact same type of the brain. The memory capacity of the brain is 2.5 petabytes, which means if I have to draw all the memory function of a single brain, I will have to stack the entire Burj Khalifa and still it won't be enough. Building the alpha, I have to sit at least 5 to 7 minutes in the entire day, closing the eyes. People are not doing it. So what is slowly happening is the brain's capacity to produce alpha is gone, which means your ability to create, ability to think forwards, ability to solve some complex problems. That's not happening. And the best way to avoid the disease is having three things. One is sunlight, second is grounding. Touch the feet to the ground. So grounding also has a direct correlation to the brain. The moment you put the feet on the ground, there is a shamanic frequency of the earth which is equal to the alpha frequency in the brain. There are some 40,000 new brain cells which have been found in the heart.
How long or short you breathe decides how long or short I live.
A tortoise lives 100 years and the breath is what? 4 a minute. If you look at the dog, keeps panting all the time. What is the lifespan? 12 years. It's not really the health span, it is the breath span.
Dr. Sweta Adatia, a visionary neurologist, TEDx speaker, is the best-selling author of the book Future Ready Now. A Cambridge alumnus with over 8 years of leadership across UAE, Asia, Africa and North America, she has pioneered brain mapping to boost peak performance through her Limitless Brain lab and startup My Limitless Brain.
We came across this Baba called Khareshwar Baba. 14 years he hasn't slept.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
So how is this possible?
The entire world is in something called the sleep debt because they are not sleeping on time. The melatonin is the hormone which leads you to sleep. This melatonin starts around 11:15, 11:45 and peaks at 12. 12 o'clock we are watching television. 12 o'clock we are scrolling the Instagram reels.
What are some brain foods that we can have which can help enhance our brain health?
Avocado is a great example of berries. So all the gooseberries, which is amla, all the blueberries, all the nuts, so almonds and your walnut, all the raisins.
Your thinking capabilities expand by 100% if you have 1 glass of ashcord juice every day.
Wow. One of the multivitamins called when people were taking that, 2.5 years of the brain age, they were able to recover back. What happens when you put on the dried cow dung your feet and then you're meditating? What is the influence on the brain? The meditation is deeper. What we saw was that the alpha was increasing just by putting the cow dung. Why are we burning incense sticks? Because that fragrance is actually making your limbic system calmer. Fragrances and memory is very intricately connected. Left-handed people, they are the best scuba divers. If they have a stroke, their speech goes out, there's a larger chance of recovery in a left-handed than a right-handed because their speech is in both sides of the brain.
What is the one brain hack for success? How can I be in a position to reverse my brain age?
So there was one technique which I practiced, what is also called and automatically the gamma was formed. All your questions of reversing the brain age will be done with that gamma. 4 to 5% of the brain increase just by a simple gratitude practice. Wow. Before going to bed also, 1 glass of water is must because your brain is going to shrink. It's going to dehydrate in the night. How we do aerobics, we have something called neurobics. Neurobics says that, every day I wake up in the morning and I'm brushing with my right hand. You should start brushing with your left hand. As we are speaking, America is undergoing a pandemic, another pandemic. After the COVID, this pandemic is really something which is significant.
A front-runner of building inner empires of the brain, it is our pleasure to have with us on today's health episode of the Body to Being podcast, the multi-gold medalist, the distinguished Dr. Sweta Adatia.
Hi, this is Dr. Sweta Adatia and I had the opportunity to actually examine the brain of Shlloka Joshi.
Did you know every 10 years we lose 5% of our brains? Or that an individual is capable of performing not 1 or 2 activities at the same time, but up to 1,000 activities at the same time with the same amount of productivity. You must have heard of Agastya Muni. Well, he was capable of performing 1008 tasks at the same time. In today's masterclass, we'd be learning some of the secret insights of the brain, how to create a super brain, how to manifest success and greatness, how to increase your memory, how to reverse aging, and much more from one of the best brain doctors of the world, Dr. Sweta Adatia, all the way from Dubai. So please do watch the podcast till the end. And if you haven't already, I'd be very grateful if you can subscribe to the channel.
Namaskaram, Dr. Sweta Adatia. This podcast comes with perfect timing because I'm going to be completing 35 this year. And in yoga, it is said that after the age of 35, your brain begins to become dull. And I wouldn't lie, but it has led to moments of anxiety. So I would say perfect timing. My first question to you is, tell me some of the most unconventional, unique brains of individuals that you have encountered in your life as a brain doctor.
Our brain lab, Limitless Brain Lab, does a lot of experiments to figure out what is going behind the scenes in the brains of peak performers, such as meditators, people who have been athletes. We had one of the guys who was a parachute jumper, 29,000 parachute jumps and no accident. He's one of those top 0.01% in the world. So these are some of the brains which is just amazing to see. But one brain comes to my mind, she's a person called Nicole. She stood on Burj Khalifa. I don't know if you know those ads of Emirates Airlines. She's standing on the Burj Khalifa and showing the Emirates Airlines tags. And it was very interesting because when I read her story, I invited her to the lab for doing the brain scan. And she said, I went through 7 fractures and 6 months of ICU. And after so much of accidental trauma, you have the resilience to go and stand on Burj Khalifa. I mean, that was interesting. But the second part was more interesting. She says, does your lab have any kind of injections and needles? Then I'm not coming. I said, wow, you can stand on Burj Khalifa, but you are afraid of the needles. So this is what makes brain very interesting. Each and every circuit which goes above and everything what is behind the scenes. And the second guy which comes to my mind is Dr. Kalai Cherian. He's one of those guys who has Ashtavadhan and then Shatavadhan, So all at once you can have 100 things which you can remember and which you can reproduce. So they do these shows in the Indian ancient literature. We had this Shatavadhan and these kind of memory.
Dashavadhani,
Yes,
correct.
exactly.
Yeah.
So in his brain was amazing to see. I mean, I don't even remember what did I eat 2 days back,
Yeah.
And how do you do that?
What are some brain foods that we can have specifically which can help enhance our brain health, whether it is memory, increasing our thinking capacity, etc.? And what are some of the foods that we shouldn't have in order to destroy our...
Yes, let's start with shouldn't have. The shouldn't have is sugar. So anything which is direct sugar.
Okay.
Refined sugar, anything which is white sugar, that is bad. Anything which is preserved, anything which has all these chemicals, monosodium glutamate and everything which, now for example, the sauce, the ketchup is the biggest example, right? Ketchup has the number of the chemicals it has, it's just mind blowing to read every single chemical what comes in. So that is very dangerous.
Tomatoes.
Yeah.
You have, MSG kind of thing.
Yeah,
There's a food scientist who just told me this, that tomatoes have a similar effect like the MSG.
Correct. I agree. So there are certain foods which is damaging the brain cells. Now we have to look. I tell that it is about the cognitive padding that you have. It's like how many layers of the cell you have reserved for yourself. It's the cognitive currency. Bank mein paisa hame check karna hai, but brain ka bank balance we are not worried about, because every 10 years we will lose 5% of the brain. Irrespective, not doing anything, we will lose 5%. So how much is the reserve that you have kept? How much is the mental padding that you have kept? Otherwise, anyways, the brain graph is going down. So you have to at least stall it and keep it. And diet is one of the ways in which you can do that. So the diet, then at least you have to eat healthy. So what you should not eat is what is damaging these cells, because you want to keep the reserve. Now in the cell, there is mitochondria, which is your powerhouse. There is protoplasm, there's nucleus. There's so many elements which you have to feed. And there's a cover of that brain also which you have to feed. So let's not, if we understand the fundamentals, what are you feeding? The brain is this big, but if we go to the unit of it, that unit of it is the brain cell. In that brain cell, what is required to feed that mitochondria, the energy powerhouse? What is required to feed the layer? What is required to feed the inside small organelles? And you quickly get the answer that the layer is all lipids, the good fat.
Okay.
And that's why, fat free and that's very bad for the brain. So you should never go completely fat free and healthy, good fats are necessary. The high density lipoproteins that we talk
Example?
about, HDL is very good. Avocado is a great example. Foods with high omega-3 can also have a lot of fat.
Flax seeds and all.
Yeah, which is
Okay.
great for the brain. Now comes the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell, needs iron. Iron is a very key element of that, have you ever had the dates?
Yeah.
What you feel after that? You feel sharp.
Yes.
You feel good.
Yeah.
You feel also hydrated. Then that was the reason why it grows in the deserts, because the purpose was to quickly hydrate you, quickly give you a sugar, and sustains for long.
And most of the brain is water, right?
And most of the brain is water and sustains for long. That is the beauty of it. But it is not a refined sugar. It is a natural sugar. It processes very fast. So that is that, and it has iron. So
Correct.
iron for that mitochondria. Then comes vitamins. Small organelles needs vitamin B1, which is very important for memory. A lot of people who drink beer and all alcohols and all, they eliminate vitamin B1. So sometimes, they get this diluted forms, what we call encephalopathy. Wernicke's is a very classical encephalopathy coming from vitamin B1 washout. And it's also called the pot belly. When people who drink beer, that pot belly comes in, B1 is eliminated. They have dry skin, they have tingling, dry beriberi. So it is a very classical example of B1 deficiency. B6, very important for mental sharpness. Now B6, we don't even talk about B6 as being so good for your mental wellness, mind becomes good with that. B12, now all vegetarians.
B6 का example आप दीजिए.
Vitamin B6 comes mostly from green leafy vegetables. Most of the covered vegetables, the leaves vegetables, spinach ho gaya, then your cabbage, all this gives you all the three, B1, B6 and B12. These are essential nutrients. You have to have it. So salad is very important. Eating raw vegetables is very important. And if you are not able to do that, then you have to resort to also a pill which gives you that. Vitamin B12, for example, for a vegetarian is very difficult because it's from eggs, it is from the meat, it is from the yolk of this, which we don't eat. So we have to have vitamin B12. So for me, I'm a pure vegetarian. So since so many years, I have been taking my B12 supplement. So you have to make sure that your vitamin organelles are fed. You have to make sure that your cover is fed. You have to make sure that iron is there. So let's make it very simple for the audience. What should they have as the brain food? Let's make it BRAIN. तो याद रखना बड़ा easy हो जाएगा, okay? What will be B standing for? It will be berries. So all the gooseberries, which is amla, all the blueberries. Why is blueberry such a popular food? It is basically it gives mental sharpness. It builds your brain. So
Amla is also fine.
Amla is also good. It's
because
vitamin
it's
C.
sasta, na? It's cheap
and
in
sasta.
India. Yeah.
And vitamin C, it will allow more iron. Indirectly, you are helping the brain by absorbing the iron. So now the interesting thing about blueberry is, the whole world is gaga about blueberry, but we don't produce blueberry.
Correct.
We get it from US and then it's stored. So it becomes a stale food, slow
Correct.
food. I'm not a fan of anything which is traveling and which is
Correct.
coming. And unfortunately, I live in Dubai where most of the things
Yeah.
travel and come.
Yeah.
But you should have a small little kitchen garden where you can feed yourself at least some things,
Correct.
Then comes R.
Just to add to this, in yoga, we say the prescription for eating food is a radius a man can walk in a single day. You take that patch of area. Let's say if in a single day, if I can walk for say 10 kilometers, I take that radius only to get my food from, because the earth in me is interacting with the mother earth. So for that connection to happen, I can't be getting a kiwi from New Zealand and expecting myself to be healthy.
And out of season also. Now we get mango round the year. 12 months. That was never supposed
Amras. I went to Gujarat. No? So and the आम is also, I'm like, कहाँ से आ रहा है? Dairy से आ रहा है. I'm like, यार, कहाँ से आ रहा है? इस ऐसे season में कैसे आ रहा है? So this is all genetically modified.
Genetically modified, absolutely, R is rich omega-3. So walnuts, flax seeds, we have the flax seeds and all used to be a part of our mouth fresheners. If you come to Gujarat, they put all the seeds and I would wonder why do they put, but it's good for the brain. A is for avocados and also some people who take egg. Egg is good because it gives you that vitamin B12 if you are taking it. I is for the iron that we were talking about. So all the iron rich food, anything which is dark skin, like say beetroot, that will have a lot of iron. We talked about the dates, jaggery, that is rich in iron. And then the last N is all the nuts. So almonds and your walnut, all the raisins, all of it is very good for your good cholesterol, which is around that brain cells that we were talking about. But in the current days, I think we've just messed up with this diet. Now, there was a very interesting study which has just been published. It's called Cosmos Mind. What they were checking is what happens if you take the flavonoids or the cocoa beans versus a multivitamin. What happens to your cognitive age or your brain age? How is your memory then, how is it sustaining? What they found was that multivitamin, and it was a blinded study. So the person who was giving the multivitamin didn't know what it has, and then the cocoa bean was given. So it was a very, very elaborate study which was done. 22,000 participants. So very robust study. It's just been published, I think, a year back. What they found was that the cocoa beans was not that effective for stalling the brain age or for improving the memory, but a good multivitamin. And they showed what were the elements of that. Some 17 different elements were there, which is also now in Centrum. One of the multivitamins called Centrum. When people were taking that, 2.5 years of the brain age they were able to recover back.
Okay.
Which is significant.
Okay.
Because once it's staging down, you're able to stall it and then have 2.5 years back. So
Okay.
people who are not taking a balanced diet, people who are taking a very erratic diet, who cannot have all these things balanced, have to resort to taking the multivitamin.
Okay. I have a question here. In Ayurveda, it is said that if you take supplements, right? Because we also get this a lot, right? Vitamin D, B12 and all of that. It impairs your digestive system. And so if you're taking it, then you should break it. So can you give us a prescription for how long? When should you break it? When should you restart?
Beautiful question. See, that's why what we call drug holidays. So you take your multivitamin, let's say you take it for 2 months, break it for 1 month. You take it for 2 months, you break it for 1 month. Why are we doing that? I always had this question. Now, Ayurveda says is very well that it is upsetting the digestive system. Why was this happening? Because your body's own production capacity will stop. It'll become lazy, na?
Correct.
Aa raha hai, aane do. Why should I make it? So it will not do that effort. So you should never let the body not do the effort, because that is part of your metabolic process. Your body's factory is running, Otherwise the factory will be shut down, then you'll have to crank it open. So that's the reason why you take it for 2 months, have a break for 1 month, take it for 2 months, again have a break for 1 month. But it should be taken after the age of 65 for sure. Anybody who is above 65 years. Also, there is stress of the cell which is wearing off, right? The cell is not dying over the period of the time. There's death in the cell which is happening. To stop that, you have to do everything to repair it, what we call oxidative stress. So antioxidants, omega-3 is a classical example of an antioxidant. Now, omega-3 otherwise is found in all the fish oils and the sardines and all. People who are vegetarian, very difficult for them to get omega-3. So you have to take a pill of omega-3.
What about ghee?
Yeah, ghee is very good. Ghee has good fat, which is important for the layering. In fact, ghee is also in Ayurveda, ghee has a very important role to play, right? They call it Shatagrit.
Yeah, that's 100-year-old ghee. They also call it Rasayan, which means it is regenerative, anti-aging.
Yes, and I think cow, the entire biology and biophysiology of cow, I call it cow as a mobile hospital. Everything of the cow, Panchagavya, what we call, every little thing is very helpful.
Correct.
And somebody would be wondering why an allopathic doctor is talking about cow. But again, that stems from my own experience. So my mom is a pharmacist, but anytime when I go to her and say, oh, I have allergy in the nose, go put cow ghee. I had a very bad digestive stomach. It was not working and functioning well. Go and have the cow ka chash or the buttermilk. So all my life, 20 years long, until the time I got conscious and aware, I have been treating with all the cow elements, the cow arka, also the urine of the cow, they say is very powerful. In fact, I've just come from an experiment of the cow dung. What happens when you put on the dried cow dung your feet and then you're meditating? What is the influence on the brain?
What is the influence?
It was very interesting experiment, because first time I'm seeing a cow dung which is, nicely wrapped and where you can put your feet on. And I mean, I was, as a scientist, you always wonder, what is this going to do to the brain? But the moment the person was, then obviously you were meditating also at that time. So you meditate with the cow dung and without the cow dung. What is the difference? Your meditation is deeper. Your alpha waves is for relaxation. What we saw was that the alpha was increasing in the amplitude. It was in the force just by putting the cow dung. And then you wonder what is happening, which means there's earthing happening. Automatically your brain is getting wired. In fact, I can show my mobile phone. I use a little cow chip, which I keep it on the cow dung chip, which is nicely wrapped, which is on the mobile phone. Because when we tested all the electromagnetic radiations, and look, these are all the experiments which are eye-opening experiments. And I always tell the people, do it for yourself. A little electric meter is not difficult to get. Go ahead and check what is the electric volt and the magnetic field. If you have the meter, it will show both. Go and check what is happening when you put it on the phone. And once you put the chip, it just becomes literally zero or barely something which comes in. because all the time you are getting bombarded from this rays.
Yeah.
In fact, I visited a very nice center called Holistica Healing Center or Holistica World in Surat in Gujarat, and Dr. Dharmesh Shah is the founder of it. And we were just talking and he says, come, I'll show you a absolutely stunning room. So I said, yes. We walk into the room and I was expecting some things from US and some kind of a hula which will be there. And he says, this is our meditation room, completely radiation free, 100% radiation free. And I said, okay, what is it made of? It was all cow dung.
Wow.
When you put a cow dung, and that was the reason why in good old days, they used to do that, and that becomes radiation free. So simple things getting you to get your health back, So I'm a huge fan of the techniques and the food, like we were talking about ghee, which is just a simple, cheap and effective source.
There's another, since we're talking about foods, ash god in yoga, we say supposed to be a positive pranic food. So a balanced diet in yoga is seen as positive pranic, negative pranic and zero pranic. There's no calorie system.
Okay.
It's even different from Ayurveda. Yoga
Beautiful.
goes a step beyond. The most positive pranic food on the planet is the ash god. Nothing can beat that.
Why
which
would
is
that
why
be?
So I'm assuming that it's to do with the energies. Maybe the yogis of the yore knew how the system worked when you consumed ash god. So one simple thing is if you go to South India, because I also live in Bangalore partly, outside the houses, it's a very common sight. Even these days, they'll hang an ash god out.
Oh, really?
Because it is supposed to be so positive pranic that it'll attract the negativity.
Oh, interesting.
So we say if you put it in your system, imagine the kind of positive vibrations that it has. And now this is science. If you have 1 glass of ash god juice every day, within a week's
Diabetes, it's good for diabetes, right?
diabetes, because it's astringent, that's
Right.
true. But within a week's time, and this is scientifically tested, your thinking capabilities expand by 100% if you have 1 glass of ash god juice every day.
Wow, I should start
For
that.
a week.
And we should test it
And
as
test
well.
it,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. Pretty amazing.
So for children and for even...
See, that is the beauty of our yogic times. They knew everything which was scientific.
Yeah.
Now science is just playing a catch up.
Correct,
Let's find it out. Yoga nidra, now let's find out. But they already knew all this. Now that's why, I always feel that we get so-called so dazzled by the IQ. What is the intelligent quotient of the person? Do we even ask what is the intuitive quotient? They would just be sitting in the meditation and then they would get all the knowledge of whatever physics, chemistry,
Or
you
0
name
of
it.
100, infinity. was all
Precisely. And what
yogis.
is that? And we call them not intelligent? That's intuitive quotient. That's the intuitive knowledge. And it's a very special knowledge. But our schooling system, our education system is just about IQ,
Yes.
unfortunately.
Yes. Namaskaram, everyone. So we have an upcoming Ladakh yoga retreat. It is yoga and sightseeing. The module that we will be taking up is the Yogasanas module. It is a very subtle and powerful yoga module. And this comes from a 15,000-year-old science. This has transformed my life completely and I can't wait for these tools to get to you. So please do join us. I look forward. See you soon. So explain to me when you talk about... Dashavadhani, which is doing 10 activities at the same time. So, I was going to ask you this question later into the podcast, but I'll take it up now. Modern science tells us that, you can do 1 activity at the same time, not even 2 activities at the same time with equal amount of productivity. But our traditional sciences, like you mentioned, we have the concept of people doing not just 10, 100, but up to 1,000. So I came up with this during my research. There's something called Sahasravadhani, which is doing 1,000 activities at the same time. And a classic example of this is Agastya Muni.
Yes.
Agastya Muni, who's given us the Hatha Yoga and the Siddha medicine and all of that. 1,008 activities at the same time, and there have been umpteen such instances in our literature. So please explain to us what exactly is happening with these people.
So see, what happens is let's understand from the fundamentals. So brain kya hota hai? What is really happening behind the scenes in the brain? Now all of us, irrespective, in fact, when Einstein died, there was a pathologist who wanted to steal his brain. He wanted to understand what is happening in his brain, Why is Einstein Einstein? And to his surprise, there was nothing extraordinary which was found in Einstein's brain. There was just a little bit of 15% of the parietal lobe. Parietal lobe is right here. It is more for visuo-spatial orientation. I'm going in a space. How do I navigate the space? And that is it. There was nothing special found in Einstein's brain. So all of us are born with the exact same type of the brain, the same type of the make. So what is happening in these people is, and that is what we have fundamentally come to understand with the labs experiment, all of us have these 3 brains which are operational. One at the back of the brain, which is called brain stem. I'm breathing, breathing, my heart is beating. And then if we go a little bit up there, there is something called the limbic system. So that's your brainstem. Then there is a limbic system which comes in, and then there is this frontal cortex. The frontal cortex is the most powerful out of all. Now let's understand the functions of each. Brainstem, I'm breathing, my heart is beating. Limbic system is all about emotions. Life is all about threats, right? I mean, Mumbai's traffic today morning was the threat. It's always about threat. In the good old days, it used to be tigers and lions. Suddenly a boss's email comes in, a WhatsApp communication comes in. So all these are the threats that we have to attend. So this limbic system is all about avoiding those threats. So it is always in the state of fight, flight, fear, or freeze. And then once you come to the frontal cortex, that is the seat of human consciousness. That is where you choose what is right and wrong. That is where you decide what is happening with me in future. That is where you are creative. That is where you can have the perfect memory, what you're talking about. Now, the interesting thing between the two is they work like a seesaw. So if my limbic system is here, my frontal cortex is here. And then again, if my frontal cortex is here, my limbic system is here, which means one of them can operate efficiently.
Only one.
Only one. And most
So
of
I
the
didn't
times.
understand. Help me explain this.
So for example, my limbic system is here. It's emotional.
Okay.
It's very active, which
Yeah.
means I'm always in the state of fight, flight, fear, or freeze mode. Then my frontal cortex, which is my rational cortex, is not functioning properly. Which means most of the times when I am in a situational threat, most of the things right now is all like a threat for the brain, right? I'm always in that state of anxiety. I'm always in the state of that emotional trauma, let's put it that way.
Okay, so if one part of the brain functions,
Yes.
the other will not function.
Other will not
So if I'm
function.
feeling threatened or fearful,
Yeah.
this may function, but this will not
Precisely,
function. Or if
precisely.
this functions, this doesn't function.
Precisely. So most of the people are living in that fear, in that anxiety, in that insecurity, in that feeling of fight, flight, fear, or freeze.
Okay.
So this won't function because this is so important for memory, for such kind of memory where you have to remember multiple things all at once. It's actually different things which are presented to the person, and the person's attention is superb to remember all of that, not just in the forward order, but sometimes also in the reverse order. That's always a difficult task,
Okay,
right?
like maybe
100 things are presented. For
Yeah.
example, I'm going
Yeah.
to speak about Dr. Kalai because the show we saw, and I have seen it with my own eyes when we did this experiment.
Okay.
So, for example, he's making a sculpture.
Okay.
And then there is somebody who is asking a mathematical question, and this is like a difficult mathematical question.
Oh.
And then he's also playing chess, and he's remembering the moves of the chess. And then somebody is asking that what is the day of the birth date that the person is born. Now, these are all 4 very different tasks which he is doing simultaneously, and then he'll also reproduce end of the show all from reverse. Like this person had asked me this question, and then this was the chess move, and then this was the person who tapped me. This is what was the question, the day of the date of the birth. I mean,
And you
how?
get the right answers.
Absolutely. That is the beauty of it. 99% of the answers are right, which is just fantastic, right?
so this is not just for activity, but it can go up to 1,000 activities.
Yes, exactly. That is what you mentioned,
Wow.
right?
Sahasra Avadhani.
Sahasra Avadhani. And
Yeah.
this Shata means 100. So
Yeah.
Shatavadhani. Ashta means 8. So Ashtavadhani. Now, so just imagine that what capacity of your frontal cortex is required. That much amount of attention, focus, the memory, everything has to be at the peak. Now, for most of us, you and me, what is happening is the limbic system is always active. It is always in that threat mode. And hence the frontal cortex cannot operate. That is one of the reasons. Now, second thing to understand in the brain is very simple yet very exciting. There are 4 fundamental brain waves in how we operate.
Okay, if you come to the brainwave, so you said that for these people, it seems like both of these parts are functioning at the same time,
Right.
Which is why they are able to perform equally in all of these activities, whether 4, 10, 100, 1,000, equally at the
Correct.
same time. But in our case, that's not happening.
Correct.
Is this then a biological differentiation? They were born like that and I wasn't born like
So
that?
it's a beautiful question. So what is the role of genetics, and then what is the role of epigenetics? If genetics was everything, then why should we even bother? Then we would have been born genetically the perfect being, and I would have said, oh, because just blame it to my genes. My genes are imperfect, and hence I cannot do this. So it's not just the genes, it is also the environment, the way the brain is being brought up, the way the things are dawned upon that brain. What is the situation around the brain when the child is growing up? And that brings me to an important thing about 0 to 3 years. When the child is 0 to 3 years, the environment, the stimulation that you give, because that is the time when the brain is going at the fastest speed, 7 100 brain cells per second. So when a young parent comes to me and says, I have a kid between 0 and 5, even up to 5, and I say, please don't even waste your 5 minutes building the child, because in those 5 minutes you have built God alone knows how many circuits. So for all these people, it is not just the genetic component which is working, but it is also the epigenetic component which is working. Now,
So epigenetics
is environment. It is the environment. It is how you're reared. How are you stimulated? You know.
Okay. So like nature versus nurture.
Absolutely,
that kind of a thing.
absolutely. And now look at today's kids. What is happening with today's kids? How are they getting with the screens? Right. If the child is not eating, put a screen in front of the child. If the child is not behaving, put a screen in the child. So coming back to the brain waves, because this screen is also giving you a idling rhythm. Single brain wave is firing, and hence you're not serving your brain. To serve the brain, you need to have different stimulations. I mean, I remember playing in the mud. I'm sure you would have done. We have climbed
paper
trees.
boats
बिल्कुल, absolutely.
जब बहती थी अपनी हो, बरसात में you had the paper boats and all of that.
Absolutely, we have done all of that. Why did we do that? We used to light the diyas. We used to have all the holy colors. I mean, we've done all those things. That has helped our brains grow. That multi-sensory stimulation is helping the brain to produce the right chemicals, the right circuits, the development, everything. And now that's why, I feel that the children today are very unfortunate. Coming back to the brain waves, there are 4 fundamental brain waves. Now you are talking, I am talking, my brain is firing, your brain is firing. We are in the fast rhythm called beta. Beta is the fastest rhythm. Now most of the times when we close our eyes, we sit like that, we produce a slow wave, sinusoidal wave called alpha. That is a slower wave. As I'm about to go to sleep, there is this phase when you get a lot of ideas, you're just in that trance state. Or sometimes, when you're driving a car, suddenly you wonder, oh my God, I don't know how I reached here. Or when you're taking a shower, those kind of the idea flows, that is theta. And when you fall off to sleep, it is the slowest wave called delta. Now, all these 4 waves have also locations in the brain.
Creative mode?
Theta.
Theta.
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of creative people would have high theta?
Correct, exactly. So high theta will be there in creative people. Now, I generally take my workshops and every single person I ask that how many minutes do you close your eyes and sit in the entire day? To my surprise, the answer comes sometimes no time, less than 1 minute, less than 2 minutes. Now imagine, which means if I were to build a biceps, I don't look at the biceps and say, hey, biceps build. I have to work towards it.
Yes.
Now for building the alpha, I have to work towards it, which means I have to sit at least 5 to 7 minutes in the entire day, closing the eyes to produce that alpha. And people are not doing it. So what is slowly happening is the brain's capacity to produce alpha is gone. Now, what does alpha do to the brain? Alpha is relaxing, it is calming, it is de-stressing, it is allowing you to even have complex cognitive challenges being performed in the brain. There's something called peak alpha. So, all of us have the alpha rhythm between 8 and 12 hertz, irrespective.
Okay.
Now, most of the peak performers that we study in the lab, they have between 13 and 15. So the peak of the alpha is very strong for them, which means they are training the alpha. Some things which are doing, which is allowing their alpha to grow. Now, when we study these brains and these 4 waves, all the 4 waves should be in the right location. It should have what we call the power, which means the amplitude with which they are firing. Now, beta should always be in the front. The moment the beta goes at the back, that means the person will be very restless, very agitated.
Matlab they can keep shifting their fluid?
Yes. So all the 4 brain waves are fluid because the state, depending on the time of the day, for example, right now, as I said, we are in the beta. The moment we close our eyes, immediately we can see when we hook up the EEG, we do something called ECG for the heart and we do EEG for the brain, electroencephalogram. So beta should always be in the front. The moment the beta goes in the back, it will make us restless, agitated. Most people with anxiety, very severe anxiety, like medical anxiety, generalized anxiety disease, we see firstly a lot of beta, and secondly it is all shifted posteriorly, it is all at the back. So that's about beta. Now alpha should always be at the back. Alpha should never be in the front, because your front, you need everything clear, right? Front should be working perfectly fine. Now, once the alpha comes in the front, then there is a problem because it's a slow wave, which means your ability to create, ability to think forwards, ability to solve some complex problems.
Decision making.
That's not happening.
In which cases does the alpha come forward?
Very rare cases the alpha comes forward. Now, for example, there is an imbalance between the alpha. Let's say the alpha is coming in the front part of the brain. Now, if the alpha is higher on the right, it also indicates anxiety. If the alpha is higher on the left, then there is no symmetry also. Again, the symmetry plays a very very, very important role. If the alpha comes high on the left, it indicates lack of lethargy, lack of energy. It indicates little depression, low mood. So all the, even not just the power, even the balance is very important. So all these peak performers have perfectly symmetrical balance in their frontal cortexes. That is another very key, important and interesting fact. Now coming to the theta.
You used another terminology.
Prefrontal cortex.
Prefrontal
Yes.
cortex. What is
so
the prefrontal
largely,
cortex?
frontal cortex is also divided into something which is pre and then the entire frontal cortex. This prefrontal cortex has a little bit of a wiring which is to the limbic system. The previously what we were talking about, the seesaw, right? Now this, if it is robust, this prefrontal cortex can actually then regulate the emotional system. For example, let us give a very, very simple example. Somebody is asking you something and you got angry. Now in that moment of anger, what will happen is there's something called amygdala, which is sitting in that little limbic system, will be firing, and what we call amygdala hijack happens. So when I'm really angry, good words impossible. Try to become angry and speak good words. Try to become angry and say love. Not possible, because once that amygdala hijack happens, you don't know what you are speaking. You are completely out of your brain. And that frontal cortex, that prefrontal cortex of that big portion is allowing that control. It will allow the amygdala to say, no, it's time not to be angry. It's time not to speak these words. So emotional regulation comes in. The emotional state can be changed. And this amygdala is very interesting. It only takes 13 seconds for it to fire.
So any kind of compulsion, if I distract myself within those 13 seconds.
Yes, anger, specifically somewhere where you are about to take a irrational decision, let's put it that way.
Or be reactive.
Be reactive, exactly.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Life is all, I think, about response.
Yes.
And we have converted into the reaction.
Correct.
This response is actually coming from the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for making sure that you're talking the right thing, you're doing the right thing, you're making your life comfortable in a way that you're taking the challenges also, and you're not getting stressed about it. I mean, stress has become a buzzword right now. You should see in my clinic, I have people coming from top companies, even companies such as, really big ones, all the big fours, and they say, I have burnout. I mean, in my generation, when my parents used to be in the workforce, I have never heard the word called burnout.
Correct.
And burnout is sort of the new, how do you burn out? I mean, that's because you continuously keep making your limbic system active. You're always scanning the threat. If let's say I'm given a job of a security and all my job is to just take care that nobody is coming here, I have to avoid the threat, then obviously I'll be tired. So it's like that tired phenomena which is happening. Now coming back to these peak performers, they have a very well regulated prefrontal cortex, and hence the emotional system is not getting hijacked. So it's under their control. When we say loose terms, we say mind is not in my control.
Correct.
And if you control the mind, everything happens well.
Correct.
Mind is actually the software and the brain is the hardware. I can pull out the brain, I can put on table, and I can dissect the brain. Mind's properties are subtle. Until now, scientists have not been able to map the mind. But mapping the mind or mapping the brain is actually bringing out the software components of the mind only. When I say anxiety, it's not that the brain is giving that anxiety. It's the mind through the brain which is causing that. So, I ask a very interesting question to the people, and I'm going to ask you as well. Where is the mind?
It's not there. It's like that imaginary access.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Where
to you,
is that?
actually.
That was mind reading. No.
Did you?
No. You can do that, not me. So where is the mind?
So, as far as I know, it doesn't have a geography.
That's right.
In the system.
That's right. So a lot of people think that brain, the initial answer that they give is brain.
Yeah.
Well, if I had a little pain in my toe,
100%
guaranteed my mind would be there.
Correct.
If I were to go on a holiday tomorrow to Singapore, my mind would have traveled to Singapore.
Correct.
So
this is the mind or the brain?
This is the mind, because brain has a geographical location.
Yeah.
It has an anatomical place. You can bring the brain out, but the mind cannot. So until today, the modern neuroscience and everything that we talk about, we really don't know how to map the mind.
Yeah.
We know how to map the brain, and hence we understand the functions of the mind, which is the beauty of the data that we collect. We have some amazing peak performers' brains, as I was talking in the initial part also, that this allows us to reflect. If it is happening in them, it's also possible for you. Let's give an example. Let's make it very simple, okay? A lot of people come and tell, hey doc, I have a lot of overthinking, which means your mind is fast. Let's say there is a Ferrari which is going at 150 kilometers an hour. Now you want to stop that Ferrari. Can you stop it? Not possible. It'll skid. So you have to decelerate, right? My mind is fast. How do I first know that my mind is thinking so fast? And then the next question is, how can I stop my mind? So mind is connected to the breath. If I am overthinking, if my mind is constantly distracted, my breathing will be different. I'll be breathing fast. I will be breathing shallow. I'll be breathing somewhere between 18 to 20 breaths, while my normal breath should be anywhere between 16 to 18. And if you look at a yogi, the yogi's breath is 6 to 8. If you look at a tortoise, forget a yogi.
Yeah.
A tortoise lives 100 years
Yeah.
and the breath is what? 4. 4 a minute. If you look at the dog, keeps panting all the time. What is the lifespan? 12 years. So I had to actually study.
So just to summarize this point, how long or short you breathe decides how long or short I live,
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
and
So
therefore
it's not
immortality.
absolutely. It's not really the health span. It's not really the lifespan. It is the breath span. The breath span is very, very important. Now, we can do a very simple experiment. You can check it for yourself now, and people who are listening to us also can do the same experiment. Just put a little index finger right at your nose horizontally, and then slowly see until what extent are you breathing. Your breath flow will be hitting the finger, and you just keep slowly going down and down and down laterally, and stop where your breath functions stops, where the breath stops hitting. It's up to that level for you?
Absolutely not, right?
What is it? Like, for me, it's about here.
I should not feel anything, right?
You
when
should
I'm
not
breathing,
feel
without
anything.
manipulating the
no,
breath.
without
That's another thing,
manipulating
yeah.
the breath. You should not feel anything at a certain point. Roughly about there?
Yeah, approximately.
Approximately
Yeah.
there. So for most people, it's about 5-finger breath.
Okay.
Now, the longer it is, which means your limbic system or your emotional system is slightly active. Now, some people would have 14 to 18. That means they're breathing fast. They're breathing harder. They're forcing the breath out. And that is which means they're forcing the prana out. They're not really forcing the breath out. They're forcing the prana or the vital force out. So the longer it is, the bad it is, because that means your limbic system is constantly on firing. So if my overthinking mind and my over breath, I just need to calm down my breath. That's why we say 4, 7, 8. Deep breathing for 4, hold for 7, and then exhale for 8. Any combination of 1:2. When I breathe in 1 and when I breathe out 2 is kicking the vagus nerve or the parasympathetic system.
Okay.
Now, there are-
Explain the viewers what the
Yes.
parasympathetic nervous system
So
is.
there are two systems which we operate from. When I'm required to, let's say, do a fight, something where I have to attend, my body has to be ready, my legs have to be ready. In the good old days, it used to be fight, literally the
Correct.
hunting and all that.
Yeah.
But today's time, when I have to go to work, so I have to get ready, my blood has to pump in, my heart has to race, my brain has to be functioning well. So that is sympathetic system. So the second system is parasympathetic. It is little calmness, rest happens, digestion happens, I'm at peace, I'm at ease. Now the beauty is sympathetic is here, which I need it when I have to perform and function. And then when I finish doing that, I need to come back to my parasympathetic. Most of the times people only live in the sympathetic. And that is the reason why stress comes in, burnout comes in, I was in a conference where they had got a nice stress meter, So they were testing it and they said, "Doctor, why don't we test your stress?" I said, "Well, your machine won't show." So they were like, "Oh, do you have so much of the stress?" I said, "No, I have very little stress, but try." So between 0 and 100, they had a number for the stress examination. Mine came 0.5. So they were like, "You travel so much, you do so much. How is that possible?" I said, "I've trained my parasympathetic nervous system." And that training is nothing but what we call vagal mastery. So vagus nerve is the longest nerve, starts right from the brain and then goes to the toe. So you wonder why, and it's called the wandering nerve. Well, why is it wandering so much?
It literally wanders?
It literally wanders. It goes all the way there. It's going here, there, everywhere. But it's sensing. It is sensing what is happening in each of the parts of the body. So it's like little body scanning, which is happening all the time. We do these body scanning meditations, right? So that is automatically scanning it. And the moment it finds that there's a little thread, something is not right, it'll again kick in, rebalance it. So most people have lost this reset and rebalance. Constantly on the sympathetic system. So that is where the stress comes in. That is where the problems come.
What are some of the interesting, surprising fun facts about the brain?
The brain entirely is very interesting and fascinating. I joke and I say I'm a brain plumber. I fix broken brains. But that's a very, very boring day job. What is really interesting is to understand the brain, kindle the brains. First of all, let me tell you a very fun and interesting fact. What do you think would be the memory capacity of the brain? The memory capacity of the brain is 2.5 3.5 petabytes. And 1 petabyte is a million gigabyte, which means if I have to draw all the memory function of a single brain, I will have to stack the entire Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building in the world, and still it won't be enough. I have to let a video recorder, the entire video shooting, let's say what is happening for 300 long years. Despite that, my memory functioning would not have exhausted.
No, 300 long years.
300
I can
years.
record the Burj Khalifa.
No, you just keep on recording, looping, and still like the GB, the cards which we were just talking about, that how long the video can record, and it'll keep on recording for 300 long years. 24/7.
So I can just turn on my brain for 300 years and just record live.
Correct. So it's just
And
that's
I
the memory.
remember each of-
exactly. That's the memory capacity, and I would
remember each point in those
I would
three.
remember.
So why is it that we don't remember?
Exactly. So that's the question, right? Why is it we don't remember? Because we first of all do not acknowledge the power of that brain, and second is we keep doing all the lifestyle gadbad that we can. There's a little brain fitness score which we have developed. So our lab has developed, and it's available on www.drshwetaadatia.com. You just go to the down section, say a fitness score. The fitness score goes all the way from 40 to 70. I think you should also do it, and we'll see what your score is like. Anything above 65, which means you're taking care of your brain. Essentially, it's all about taking care of the brain. If you don't take care of the brain doesn't take care of you. Very simple as that. Anybody who's less than 40, cause and concern, which means your lifestyle is not right, your food that you're eating is not right, the things that you're doing is not serving your brain. The fitness score determines how long you will live. The fitness score determines your memory. It determines your complex problem solving method. How are you going to do that? It allows you whether you will be in a stress situation or a calm situation. So all this is about the brain fitness. How many times, in the good old ancient wisdom, if we go back to our rishis, if we go back to the yogis, how many hours were they sleeping?
Correct. 2
barely,
hours, maybe barely. There are people who don't sleep.
Yeah, exactly. We would never...
I'll tell you about this yogi. We were in Pithora, Uttarakhand. I was telling you my hometown. We were coming down and we came across this Baba called Khareshwar Baba. 14 years he hasn't slept.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
So how is this possible? Because in the modern science, people say, right, you need 8 hours of sleep.
Absolutely.
And usually when people say this, we sort of retreat back and say, you have people like Sadhguru who are sleeping for 2 hours.
Correct.
And there's Yoga Nidra, of course, that we know, that is you're doing spiritual sadhana while you're sleeping. So, this contradiction, how would you describe that?
So I think the first question comes is how many people are doing that level of spiritual sadhana? Once we do that level of spiritual sadhana, then we can compare ourselves to Sadhguru, or we can compare ourselves to the Babaji, what you're talking about, or to the highest of the yogi. Now, we don't do that. We live in a modern world. We eat all the modern food. I mean, we don't eat the right food, first of all. We do all the things which are against the nature. We don't have the right 5 elements and the entire Vat, Pit, Kaph, what the Ayurveda science says and everything. We don't do any of that right. Forget the spiritual practices are not there. Even closing the eyes as we were speaking is not there. Where is the question of spiritual practices? So once we don't do it, we cannot compare ourselves. So any person who's normal, average functioning in the current modern world must sleep for 8 hours. There's a reason for that. And I will come back to Yoga Nidra because that is one of my favorite topics. So sleep, why 8 hours is required? Firstly, we have completely botched our sleep patterns. I think the entire world currently, and there was a data for that, the entire world is in something called the sleep debt. Because they are not sleeping on time. If we take as an average 8 hours, most youngsters would be sleeping at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. I have people also who come and say that, no, I sleep only in the morning.
Yeah.
I said, were you a species meant to sleep in the morning?
They say night, we are night people,
yeah,
nocturnal.
Very surprising, right? So the melatonin is the hormone which leads you to sleep. Now, this melatonin kicks at what time? This melatonin starts around 11:15, 11:45 and peaks at 12. 12 o'clock we are watching television. 12 o'clock we are scrolling the Instagram reels. 12 o'clock we are on our computers. So that peak is gone. After that, it takes another couple of hours for that peak to come again. 2 o'clock. Again, we lose that peak. And then we say we don't fall asleep. Melatonin is a natural sedative. It allows you to fall asleep. When you're looking into the mobile phones, there's a blue filter which comes in, the blue light. And that does not allow the melatonin to kick in. 8 hours, in the 8 hours, the first 4 hours is very unique and the last 4 hours is very unique. We go through cycles. We go through 2 kinds of brain wave cycles. Non-REM, which is non-rapid eye movement, and rapid eye movement. In the non-REM, I'm completely asleep. I'm in deepest of the sleep states. So what is happening around anything, I'm not aware about it. But in the REM state, my eyes are moving, the nightmares that we see or the dreams that we see, all is happening in that REM.
And some people are constantly in that dream state?
Exactly. So where can the question of rest come in?
So is this deep sleep, like, for example, I was recently interviewing
Swami Arun at the Osho Tapovan at
Right.
Nepal. He talked about the Turiya state.
Yes.
And very simplistically put, he said, you will have dreams. In between two dreams, you will have this space of nothingness.
Correct.
Where you're not dreaming.
Correct.
If that space of nothingness where you're not dreaming is elongated, you wake up fresh.
Correct.
But if your dream comes one after the other without that space, which is called the Turiya state, then you wake up feeling like, Arey yaar, I haven't slept well.
Correct.
How would you explain this in neuroscience?
So first of all, there has to be an awareness of these kind of states. So Jagrat, Shushupti, Turiya, what you're telling. So all these are Sanskrit words, but then this is how the scriptures describe it, right? So first of all, you have to be aware about it. Now, Turiya is a little bit more interesting, So there are layers in the mind. Now, we were talking about the mind prior to the start of the conversation, right? So there's something called the conscious mind, which means I am looking at you, you are thinking, you're looking at me, you are thinking. Consciously, we are thinking, oh, this is what I'm speaking, this is what you are speaking. That is conscious mind, 10%. There's a deeper part, 90%, which is called subconscious. In that 90%, roughly about 10 to 15% is unconscious mind. Now, when I look at the word mind and unconscious, how can the unconscious mind be there?
Correct.
How is it possible,
Yeah.
If you are unconscious, where is the question of mind?
Correct.
So first of all, that consciousness, what modern science understands, is only about the state of my awakening. How much can I respond? What is the sensory stimulation? But when we come to the yogic text, when we come to these Vedantic literatures, where they speak about it, is these unconscious mind, where you are not in touch with yourself, but you are also not fully awake. You're not completely asleep, so you're somewhere in between. So that between state is that unconscious mind. What is the Turiya, what you were discussing about, It's very powerful because it's the deepest state. It is the deepest state where you can connect to your deepest of the core who you are. So, that becomes a philosophical question, but that is how it operates. Back to the modern science, 8 hours, 4 hours and 4 hours, absolute must for any person,
Okay.
So you cannot, if you shift, let's say you wake up early in the morning because you have to go to your work and you slept late, you miss the non-REM because you slept late and you miss the REM because you wake up early in the morning. So you should not miss either.
So this basically night shifting business, so it's the worst thing that you can do, right?
Horrible, believe me. I get very sad, when we have these people working for countries outside North America and all, their entire circadian rhythm. See,
Correct.
that's why it's a rhythm.
Yes.
I strongly believe that a disease comes, dis-ease. You will not be at ease because you are not in your rhythm.
Correct.
That rhythm is very, very important. Now, you're just upsetting the entire pace and the way your clock is. It does not work. And your pineal gland has a very deep connection to the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the brain, which is the clock or the reset of the body. For example, I want to wake up at, let's say, 6 o'clock in the morning. Try, in the night, tell yourself 3 times that I want to wake up at 6 o'clock. I want to wake up at 6 o'clock. 5 minutes before 6, you will already be awake before your alarm. Who is doing that? The suprachiasmatic nucleus. It's giving a command. It's resetting the thing. So if the mind is listening, imagine what are you feeding your mind? What are you feeding to your clocks?
Correct.
There's another interesting thing in sleep. Sleep is my favorite topic.
Yeah.
There are 4 types of chronotypes.
Okay.
And that's why since you brought it up, in the corporate world, I've never understood why should a day begin at 8 o'clock. The day should begin when the peak performance of that person is. So let me talk to you about the chronotype.
When you say 8 o'clock in the morning?
8 o'clock in the morning,
Okay.
yeah. Yes, for the morning. Most
Okay.
people are the morning people,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
I was not. So I'll tell you.
I wasn't.
The chronotype of
Yeah.
it. So Dr. Bruce has studied these chronotypes. Each of us have a particular day in the time when our brain is performing at the peak.
Different for different people?
Different for very different people, right? So let's say some of them wake up early morning 4 to 7 a.m. They are at their peak. They are called lions. So when you do that little questionnaire and survey online, you figure out whether you are a lion, which means you are having the peak energy early in the morning. My mom's a lion. So the entire house, she's the only one who is awake. And then comes the second, which is about 8 to 10 is where their brain sort of starts to wake up. Their peak capacity is at 12. That's a bear. So I'm a bear. So most of the times when people call me at 6 o'clock, I'm like, guys, I'm not a lion. I'm a bear, so spare me. And then there are wolves. Their day only starts around 3 p.m. So that's why they'll wake up late. Everything will start late for them. Their peak capacity is 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. While those guys, lions, have been dead by then because they were waking up early in the morning. And then there are dolphins. There's a little bit of variation in those dolphins. So most times now people
So
think...
dolphins is what time?
Dolphins is little late.
Post 9.
Yeah, it is little late
The night
evening.
owls, basically?
Yeah. No, it's little late evening
Okay.
and sometimes they shift to morning. So dolphin goes up and down. It's a little bit of an erratic rhythm that
Okay.
they have. So now the question comes, so night outs would be those all wolves
Okay.
because late in the day they start. So imagine their peak capacities
Correct.
are 9 p.m., which means their still capacities would remain around 1 a.m.
Correct.
When obviously the lion is dead asleep by
Yeah.
then. Now the question comes is, the question really comes is that if I'm a bear and you expect me to start my work at 8 o'clock in the morning, obviously I'll slog until 12 o'clock.
Correct.
Because my peak capacity is only at 12 p.m. So I have always wondered, why can't we use all this neuroscience to actual practical applications? Why can't the companies decide the chronotype and give them the best time, to work? See, why do you think the people who are doing the hybrid work, why do you think that the people who are working from home are slightly more efficient?
think so?
That's the data what has come in, right? Because they will be adjusting to their chronotype and doing it. You don't let them adjust otherwise in a typical office setting.
Acha. So you shouldn't have fixed hours basically.
Correct.
Work.
Correct. Decide.
Okay.
I mean, that's
Very
the
interesting.
most efficient way of bringing the performance of the brain.
Super.
So next comes is how do you sleep and what things do you do before sleeping? Very, very important to get rid of your gadgets before you go to sleep. The blue light that we talked about. The moment you have that, you're cutting off the melatonin. The second thing is it should be slightly cooler. Most of the times if it's hot, your body cannot adapt.
What temperature?
18 is a good temperature. A lot of people do 12, which is terrible for your muscles. 22 is still bad because that will give you a little bit of more heat. So 18 to 20, somewhere between that is a good temperature.
The AC basically now. This is air
yes,
conditioning.
exactly. 18 to 20. I mean, nature is the best if you're able to.
Okay.
How many people have that?
Correct. That weather.
Yeah, that weather
Unfortunately.
and that kind of. I would say that's the new luxury.
Absolutely.
The 5 elements is the new luxury. And we were
So
talking
true.
about grounding just before I came to this podcast. I said, the best way to relax and the best way to avoid the disease is having 3 things. One is sunlight. Second is grounding. Touch the feet to the ground. May it be anywhere, may it be grass, lawn, sea, does not matter. And the third thing is oxygen. All the 3 we have finished. So grounding also has a direct correlation to the brain. The moment you've put the feet on the ground, there is a shamanic frequency of the earth, which is equal to the alpha frequency in the brain. So it is creating that 7 to 10 nice sinusoidal alpha. You go out to break, vacation, you're just out there, you're in the nature. Automatically you feel relaxed and calm.
Correct.
It's because of that alpha.
There's a yogic insight here. So we do this as a part of the Bhuta Shuddhi. Bhuta Shuddhi is cleansing of the 5 elements. So this is a process that we teach in yoga, and हम कहते हैं कि if you're not able to initiate yourself into that practice like an in-person class, then आप इतना कर लो that you go out and just dig your feet for 40 minutes in mud. Expose your hands and feet. What happens is the earth element, which is 12% of us, gets activated, which directly is connected to the Muladhara chakra. Muladhara chakra in turn is related to the robustness of your system.
Right.
So naturally, you will not have diseases. So we've seen that for 80% of the cases,
Right.
their diseases have just disappeared, physical and mental. If they had constipation, especially I see this a lot. Digestive issues, we tell them you go and you work in the mud, you do gardening, start walking after your meals.
Yes.
Their digestive
Yes.
issues get disappeared.
I
So
agree.
I see
agree.
this beautiful parallel between neuroscience.
Absolutely.
Great.
And the beauty is, see, these are very cheap.
Yeah.
There's nothing, but you want to still spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
You want to go to those finest of the hospitals because then you will feel good.
Yes.
And then have all those medicines which will make you even feel,
Yeah.
I don't know if feel good or bad,
Yeah.
but yeah. So yeah, that's true actually. So I do every year, once in a year, 10 days at Jindal in naturopathy. And
Yeah.
that's where the mud therapy. And so
Correct.
that's how I get exposed to, these
Okay.
kind of things, because round the year you're not doing it. But I think gardening is a great insight.
Yeah.
Very simple things such as gardening. In fact, children should be playing in the mud for 2 reasons. One is, of course, it makes them calm because their brain is growing. And so you want it a little bit calm pace at which it grows. So you allow them to play in the mud. The second is the mud bacteria. And that also applies to this yogic technique. In the mud, there are special bacterias. There are a lot of pathogens of different kinds. And once you eat, obviously, whatever you clean, some of them will remain. And some of them should remain because that will go to your gut. Your gut is the second brain. This is your first brain. And the new latest research says this is your third brain, the heart. There are some 40,000 new brain cells which have been found in the heart, which we never knew that it existed before. So 40 to 50,000 brain cells in the heart. It's just mind-blowing. So sometimes when we say I have a heartbreak, obviously you're feeling sad. Otherwise, heartbreak and sadness, and how do you relate, how do you connect? So this second brain or this bacteria are very important for your mood. 90% of your serotonin is produced in the gut. And there is something called the gut-brain axis. Now, what is required for these bacteria? It should be diverse. So there's a little score which you can do. So I sent my stool examination, for checking the diversity score. And the guy calls me back and says, it sucks. I said, yeah, what is the score? Between 0 and 8, my score was 0.5. I said, oh God, I have to fix this, And what was the reason? I used to always eat the same food over and over again, the comfort food, I'm a Gujarati, though the similar typical Gujarati food would be served every single day. When I started to go deeper and understand how to feed the bacteria, I got an interesting answer that you need to have at least 60 to 80 variety foods in a week. Now, that's why Indian diet is very special. So many masalas. Even you take up a little dal, there will be all the masalas. There will be a little bit of lime also in that. There'll be some peanuts also in that. There'll be some jaggery also if it's a Gujarati dal.
I'm going to say that.
So different elements would be there in that, which is giving you enough diversity. So you have to make sure that your food is diverse. You have to make sure that enough raw food comes in, enough stuffed vegetables which are different comes in. Now, I was not doing that. Fermented food should be there. So that's why, good old times when Koreans and all, they used to eat kimchi, or they still eat. I was in Seoul of late and they love their kimchis. There were some 100 different varieties of kimchis. So kimchis is good. Idli is good. The dosas are good. Look at South Indians. They're very healthy. Why?
And brainy.
Yeah. Fermented food is very good, Okay. So having that diverse
Actually, in
diet.
yoga, we also say that fermented food increases tamas in the system, inertia in the system, if you have it too frequently.
Yeah, that's about, again, the balance. I think life is all again about the balance which comes in, right? But variety is very important. So all the people, and then of course there should not be any refinement, and because refined, anything that you eat refined, maida ho gaya, yeah, anything which is sugar, only sugar, all these, packaged foods that we have, all the preservatives that they put in, they kill your bacteria. So they give you, once the bacteria are killed, the layer of protection is gone. When the layer of protection is gone, a lot of other bacteria come in, which is actually damaging your intestine. Look at the number of the people with Crohn's disease.
Yeah,
look at the people
IBS.
with ulcerative colitis,
Yeah.
with irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. Why is all that? Because you have not been taking care of your gut. So mud, again coming back to mud, the mud is not just the grounding, it is also this added bacteria benefit that the mud gives.
Superb. And it was also said that during the COVID, India didn't take the hit as much because we've been an agrarian society.
Yeah,
so I think it was genetically inbuilt.
Absolutely.
You said that every 10 years, 5% of our brain gets depleted. We also reach our cognitive peak around 35.
Correct.
And then that starts depleting
Correct.
after that. We also see that I saw one of your video and you had quoted that Alzheimer's and dementia has risen by 1700%.
That's going to happen in the coming decade. That's the proportionate increase which we are anticipating.
Wow. But we also know of people who have frozen their brain age.
Absolutely. Mingyur is one such example.
Yeah.
There's a Buddhist monk called Mingyur.
Okay.
And Stanford had studied his brain for quite many years.
Okay.
He's a Buddhist monk who meditates roughly about 15 to 20,000 hours. That was the collective hours of meditation that he had. Now, most of the brain graph, as we discussed, would go down like this because every 10 years, your 5% is lost. For Mingyur, in fact, it became stalled. It was like a plateau. So there was no atrophy or there was no shrinking of the brain, which otherwise would have happened, was happening in his brain.
Oh,
And that was meditation was responsible for it, And there's a linear analysis of his brain. There's so many brain MRIs which has been done, so many EEGs which has been done on his. I think his brain has been the most which is studied in a linear fashion over a period of time.
Okay.
So again, I always feel that if he can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah.
Anyone can do it.
Absolutely. As a neuroscientist, tell me, how can I be in a position to reverse my brain age
So
and
first,
increase my memory?
so I think we all have to become like Mingyur. The very first is M for memory. So I'm going to give a little acronym again for people to understand that if you want to stall your age or reverse for that matter also, forget
Or
the stalling.
enhance.
Or enhance, exactly. Reverse the brain aging as well. You have to do certain things right. You have to get your lifestyle corrected. You have to get to the points where your brain, even if it's shrinking naturally, you're stopping it, right? You're trying to reverse that as well. So let us give a nice little acronym called MEMORY. MEMORY. What are the things that we should do? The very first M stands for meditation. Now, meditation, what is meditation doing to the brain? When you understand that, oh, Mingyur was meditating for so many years and his brain, this was happening, then what is really happening behind the scenes? Now, what is meditation doing is, and we have shown in that couple of our experiments as well, my theta, which is slow theta, becomes suddenly a high theta, and then I stay in that theta for longer period. Now, theta is a brainwave which consumes the least amount of energy and then gives you the maximum output. While beta is the least this, but it consumes all your energy. When people are in the beta mode, firing mode, they're stressed and all the energy is zapped off. So stress is nothing but your energy zapping off. So people who meditate are able to get a good alpha and a very good theta. And once your brain is in theta, its operational efficiency doubles with the less amount of stress on the brain. So that's number
So I
one.
could be doing the same amount of work.
Yes.
But I will be less stressed.
Absolutely. And you will be utilizing the least of the energy. It's like the most efficient fuel car. If I put fuel, I will get 20 kilometers per liter versus some car which is only giving me 5 kilometers a liter. So the age of the car will be dependent on how fast the wear and tear is happening.
Correct.
Same way in this brain, how fast the wear and tear is happening. So number one is meditation. And in fact, all the peak performers whom we studied, they were always, all of them, irrespective, it was like 100% of the survey result saying everybody was meditating. So it's just so interesting, Then comes E for exercise.
Okay,
Exercise.
what kind of meditation can be done?
So different types of meditations are there, right?
Okay.
Meditation word itself is very interesting. If you go ahead and put the definition of meditation, if you'll Google, they'll say there's no definition.
such word.
There's
Correct.
no such word. There's no such definition of meditation because everybody has interpreted it in the way they want. So there's Anapanasati, there's breath meditation, there's Jain Dhyan, there is Arupa Dhyan, there's transcendental meditation. Meditations is of so many different varieties,
As a neuroscientist, if one meditation you had to recommend.
So, because we have developed something called neuromeditation. So I would recommend that. But why have we done that? Why? Because every mind is different. Every brain's potential is different. So let's say I'm extremely stressed, and I'm not even able to sit still. First of all, even before meditation, I feel the entire journey of meditation is only and only preparation.
Correct.
Learn to sit still first. Learn to have the axis right. At least sit for 5 minutes absolutely without moving.
Correct.
So people don't even understand
You
that.
don't do meditation, you make meditation happen.
So yes, exactly. Meditation should never be done. It must happen. For it to happen, you have to go through that journey. Now, some minds are very restless, agitated. Some minds are already calm, but they cannot let go and forgive the past. They are always ruminating. They just cannot let out that experience what had happened. So you can't say, oh, let's do a calmness, this for you. For the person who is stressed, you can do a calmness meditation. But the person who is not letting go does not need a calmness meditation, a forgiveness meditation. They have to just let go certain things. So we have devised a questionnaire where the person can understand what is happening in their mind, what is happening in the brain, and then choose that meditation. Now, the biggest point, because I treat patients, what I have seen is I do meditation for 3 days and the fourth day they come back and nothing happened. I said, nothing will happen. They come back 40 days and then come back that, oh, I did for 40 days, nothing happened. Well, 66 days it takes to change a little bit of your circuit to at least move the circuit. And then 3 multiples of 66 to establish that circuit. Physiological changes in the brain takes time. But people, it's an instant world, 2-minute Maggie world, to McDonald's, I think Blinkit world, let's call it Blinkit world.
Zepto is 10 minutes.
World. Yeah, so Zepto world. In that Zepto world, that's not how brain functions. So that is for meditation. So neuromeditation, all the details are again available on our website. Then comes E. E is for exercise. 10,000 steps, we all know. Now they say don't even do every day 10,000 steps. You can club all of that on the weekend. And even if you do some 30,000-40,000, it need not be a 10,000 multiplied by 7. At least do 25 to 30,000 steps on the weekend and it's perfectly fine. Now, exercise also, I have my own little bit of research onto it and a little bit of opinion also, let's put it an expert opinion. See, most people consider exercise either in the form of I'm going to the gym, I'm walking. Some people also come and say, but my work entails a lot of exercise.
Yeah.
I have to go here, I have to run up, I have to run down.
Correct.
That is not called exercise.
Okay.
Anything where there has to be a rhythm. When I'm walking rhythmically, I am influencing my mind. The moment your mind is all over the place, that exercise won't count. So you should be actually exercising with a earmarked time that you have. And not just cardio, not just strength building, which most people understand, but also balance, coordination, cross-lateral training, those super brain yoga, this particular thing which we used to do in the school was just for the activation of the brain. It was, the real reason was only that the brain parts are, cross connections are happening. And there's a little brain button here, once you touch the sternum and you go 2-finger breath on the side and you just a little bit massage it, that has a direct connection to the brain's capacity to think. So you're tired.
Can we do that?
Yeah, you're just exhausted and you don't know anything, and then you just want clarity. There's a fog which sets in. So just touch your sternum, the bone, collarbone, which is right here, the prominent part, and then go 2-finger breath on the side and just lightly massaging it helps.
Okay.
So we should be now. Why do we clap when bhajans are happening?
Yeah.
Why do we sing?
Yeah, nerve endings, no?
Why? Nerve endings, because these are all the switchboards. This is the switchboards to your brain. And then you're also doing an EFT. Automatically, you are actually tapping those points, which is releasing your sometimes emotion also. You feel good after a bhajan, a song, and specifically if you are clapping. So all this is very scientific, So coming back to the exercise part. So strength is important. Balance is important. Coordination is important. Your cardio is important, which is your heart, the way walking, etc., swimming. So variety of exercise is also very, very, very important. But people feel that, oh, itna kar liya, ho gaya, bas exercise ho gaya. Brain mein kya ho raha hai? There's BDNF which is generated, serotonin which is generated, all the good chemicals which are generated. The circuits are developing. So exercise is 100% must. Now yoga. Yoga is the most beautiful form of exercise, most beautiful form to also tame the mind. There's a rhythm in yoga, sun salutations in the morning. I'm also a great fan of Chandra Namaskar, the moon salutations, because every part, the way it was built was very scientific. I'm sure sun salutations, you would also find it to be a great source of energy. You feel good, There's a change which is happening in your mental capacities. Then R, memory. So the next M, that is mental stimulation. Now, most times we keep repeating the same tasks over and over again. So how we do aerobics, we have something called neurobics. Neurobics says that, let's say, every day I wake up in the morning and I'm brushing with my right hand. You should start brushing with your left hand. Try to do the task which your brain is not accustomed to do.
The same task.
The same task. And that is where
Let's say cooking with my left hand.
Yes, precisely. Or if you're, let's say I'm sitting on the desk almost always my phone is on my right, which means my brain is now wired that the moment the phone will ring, I will go like this and pick it up. Just shift it to the left. Even these little tasks.
Chewing?
Yes, left
Okay.
and right. Very important. Most of the times, if you
Yeah.
look at there will be an asymmetry because that masseter muscle, you keep on chewing the same side. And that is also bad because you have to alternate. Now, other tasks, very simple. You go to take a shower. How many times are you closing your eyes and taking a shower?
Hardly.
Yeah. And that is a very simple neurobics exercise, which will allow your brain to now figure out, right? I had the soap in the hand. Oh, what is happening? All the sensory sensations will now be multifold in the brain because it has to be careful. You can't fall. You can't put the water in the wrong places, right?
Correct.
So that is where you are activating the brain. So all these are simple
That's why
exercises.
blind people perform better. with-
Absolutely. Their other efficiency, if you see, is very sharp. The hearing would be ultrasonic sharp because they have trained their brain into doing that forcefully. But we can do it
Correct.
at least, closing the eyes. Now, there's something called dark adaptation. I love this fundamental concept. In the good old days, in my childhood, lights would go off once in a while. We would have andhera.
Correct,
And
yeah.
then we would have to search
Yeah,
things
power
in the
cuts,
dark.
na?
Power cuts. So, aajkal ke bachcho ko to that would be like a, what are you talking,
Yeah.
which generation are you talking about, right? And that was very good because there used to be dark adaptation. Now, you go into the dark and try and search
Yeah.
the thing, you will not even see for a little while because your retina is also connected to your brain. And retinal cells in the back of the eye also degenerates. There are only 3 cells which does not have a very strong or robust ability to regenerate. Retina, which is your eye. The second one is your brain. And then third is your spine. That's why, when people have trauma, you got a spinal injury, it's very difficult for you to regenerate because the spinal cells very slow. In fact, the nerves, for people who suffer from diabetes, people who have issues with neuropathy, the rate of growth of the nerve is 0.01 millimeter per day. So when is the repair going to happen? It's a very long process, right? So people have to understand what are they doing like daily tasks and then how can they shift into neurobics. So very, very simple way of mental stimulation. Mental stimulation is can be very simply done by sensory stimulation. Incense sticks. Why are we burning incense sticks? Because that fragrance is actually making your limbic system calmer. And that was the reason early in the morning, put a diya,
Mogra,
light a lamp, mogra,
gajra, हाँ.
बिल्कुल, और अगरबत्ती कर लो. Because जैसे ही आप काम पे जा रहे हो, you don't want your limbic system to come with you. You want it to be calm, rested. You don't want to be angry. You don't want to be agitated. So simple सा आरती भी कर लिया, कपूर कर लिया.
Correct.
And all this is very scientific because that will lead you to actually have a calm brain. And you take that calm brain along. Fragrances and memory is very intricately connected. If a child who is learning, let's say, mathematical problem, not understanding, burn a vanilla flavor, burn a frankincense, burn a lavender,
Wow.
automatically in the exam, because now you created two pathways. The child was learning and then the child was smelling. When the learning will not come, let's say exam mein wahi same answer aa gaya. The moment the child is able to recollect the answer, that lavender smell will come first. Because the brain's other pathway is also activated.
Beautiful.
So this is called multi-sensory stimulation. Now, a lot of people see me grocery shopping and they wonder, doctor, you have maids and why do you go grocery shopping? I said, I want to have all the visual stimulation because in a big grocery shop, you can smell also, you can taste also a little bit, you can touch also, because otherwise all the five senses, we have barely stopped using it. You use it or lose it. That's the simple fundamental. Now people do the Sudoku and puzzles and then they say, oh, but I'm doing mental stimulation. Is that enough? What do you think?
I would think no, but just a guess. I don't know the science behind it.
So what happens is, yes, they are good if it is challenging.
Okay.
When initially you are learning, let's say those Wordles and NYT gives a very nice column. I also have it on my phone. So sometimes when you're traveling and all, the number of the words that you can generate in a minute, etc. It's good when it's new. But the moment your brain learns how to do it, then that pathway is formed and khatam, finish.
That's why they say keep learning a new skill.
Exactly. That's why you learn music. That's why you give your children also different skills, because now you're stimulating your brain. Your multi-modality is operational. And anytime when you have multiple pathways in the brain, you're protecting it. Now, left-handed people, they're roughly about 15% in the world.
Yeah.
They're the best scuba divers. If they have a stroke, for example, their speech goes out, there's a larger chance of recovery in a left-handed than a right-handed, because their speech is in both sides of the brain. So it's very interesting how the wiring of the brain operates. So that was your M, mental stimulation. Now O is optimum nutrition. And we talked about the BRAIN formula that you have to take adequate nutrition, taking care of all the supplements. If you have not had the chance of, even getting tested for vitamin D, because some people believe that why should they test?
Yeah.
I strongly feel that they should be aware about all the nutrients, irrespective of the lifestyle that they live.
Okay.
So I'm a great proponent of whatever you measure, you manage. You manage, you measure. Then comes MEMO, optimum nutrition, R, rest and sleep. We've talked about sleep quite a bit. I think rest and repair in the sleep is the only way to consolidate your memory. When we talk of memory, I get reminded of my medical school days. Exam after exam after exam. I don't know how many exams we give. Sometimes it just feels like life is an exam.
Yeah.
So when we are giving the exam, early morning we wake up. I don't know, that's such a stupid thing that we have. 9 o'clock exam is there. Mom, wake me up at 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
I'm going to
yeah.
revise. Do you think that revision has any role to play early in the morning? Zero role. Because already you are in that state of fight, flight. You're already in the state of freeze. Your limbic system is operational. You're already about to go. The brain needs some time to process. The brain needs that time to sort of assimilate. So there are 5 fundamental steps in memory. Let's talk about that a little bit, because once you understand the fundamental, then you do all the things right? The very first thing is attention. Now, most times currently, people live a distracted life. ये भी आ रहा है, वहाँ से भी आ रहा है, notifications आ रहे हैं. अगर एक कोई भी average computer वाले बंदे के पास चले जाओ और tabs देख लो, there'll be at least a 50 tabs which are open.
Correct.
There'll definitely be a chat GPT also which is open.
Yeah.
All this will be open. So distraction. So attention is the first fundamental thing of memory. A lot of people say that, oh, I don't know where I put my keys, where I put my specs, where I put my this.
Yeah.
Because you are not attending. The simple thing was,
But a lot of creative people also experience this.
yeah, that's
है
why
ना?
they're absent-minded, no? We call these creative people absent-minded professors. Why? Absent-minded is nothing but lack of attention. That's how their brain is processing, right? If they also step back and then take a deep breath and understand what they will also revert
But
back.
if they do that, then the other side gets affected.
So
है ना?
हाँ, थोड़ा सा वो रहता है.
Because I see people who are very, I won't say OCD, but you get me, right?
Yeah,
हम
yeah, yeah.
OCD तो आजकल we use it very
Very
colloquially.
colloquially. बिल्कुल.
But like people are very attentive, very
Yes.
mindful, so to say.
Correct.
I see that part of them, like a lot of writers,
Yes,
painters, authors,
yes.
they're zoned out.
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. And you'll be surprised to know Michelangelo lived more than 85. All those Greek philosophers, 90 and above. So they were all, in the peak of their brain ages. At that time, living a 90, 95 years, because they were creative, they were using the multisensory stimulation, right? They were always in that sense of creation. They were always doing something new, experimenting with the art, etc. So they had given enough stimulation to their brain. And in that time, I mean, we are talking in the Greek ancient time. Today, if I talk of 90, I'm longevity. आज के लिए जो तो वो तो थोड़ा सा तो अच्छी बात है अगर अच्छी अभी के लिए जी रहे तो. But I think they'll catch up as they grow old. When after you become 40, you want to do much more, and then you realize, oh, I wish I live a little more. I wish I little.
Yeah. But that's also unfortunate because you realize that people are not really happy.
Correct.
Long age is associated with sickness
Yes,
and weakness.
which is
but-
unfortunate. Which is a wrong concept.
Wrong, correct.
Yes, exactly.
Please
So
go
we're
ahead.
talking about the 5 steps in the
Yeah.
memory. Attention is number 1. What is the second one? Once
I have one question about attention.
Yes.
How much should the attention span be?
See, there is a little bit of a myth going on at 6 seconds and 8 seconds,
Yeah.
and there was used to be 30 seconds, and there's used to be, but the brain does not work like that. The real formula is the brain attends very sharply for 25 to 28 minutes.
Even in today's world, where we're in the social media world?
Whatever the world be, that is how the brain's this is. Of course, that is reducing. Significantly.
Yeah.
That's diminishing by miles, I would say. But that attention we are talking of and that's why, the very simple parameter to measure that would be the length of the YouTube videos which is being watched. It's, I think, under 3 minutes. There'll be a nice 1.5 hour conversation.
Correct.
And it's just 3 minutes of an average. And you look at the reels, they came down to shorts, and then the reels came down to 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's the reason why this is happening, right?
Okay.
So in attention, what is the most important is this 25 to 28 minutes. Once you are at your peak attention, peak focus, then take a break. So that is the Pomodoro technique.
Okay.
So 25 to 28 minutes again, and then take a break. In the good old days, and still I feel that education system has not understood this. They keep a class of 40 to 45 minutes. अरे आधे time तो the बच्चा will be zoned out because आपका peak का time तो उतना ही है. Whichever the brain is, it really does not matter. So that's why in those 25 minutes, drink a glass of water, because the moment you drink water, you hydrate your brain, you make its capacity slightly better. And that's why before going to bed also, 1 glass of water is must, because your brain is going to shrink. It's going to dehydrate in the night. So you expand that and keep it. It's like a little extra thing that you have in the pocket. So attention.
I have a question here, sorry.
Yeah.
Some people, when they wake up in the morning, they have this ache in the brain.
Yeah.
Is that because of dehydration?
Yes, exactly. Largely, people who wake up with the headaches, they have dehydration, because the brain is shrinking, and then that's how you need to hydrate. Now, if they think that if I drink a lot of water, I'll have to go to the washroom, so my sleep will be disrupted. So there's a lot of, myths around it, but that's not true. You don't drink liters of water, you just drink a glass of water. So that's enough for the night. Let's say if I tell you, what did you do when you were 3 years old? Describe the entire family where you were staying and this. We never do it as an exercise, which means we are not giving the storing and retrieval to even move and shake a little bit. So that is the way in which you go ahead and shake those circuits a little bit and keep it practice.
Okay.
So करना चाहिए.
Recall करते रहो.
Recall करते रहो. एक जब भी कोई भी once in a month, let's say, don't even spend more time. Just close your eyes, go back to your childhood, and then bring out those childhood memories and everything, and that will help your brain. So that is one of the hacks for keeping the memory system alive. So हो गया M, हो गया आपका, हम starting से शुरू करते हैं meditation. E हो गया आपका exercise. दूसरा M हो गया आपका mental stimulation. O हो गया optimum nutrition. R हो गया rest and recovery. और last but not the least, Y, which is your social connections. As we are speaking, America is undergoing a pandemic, another pandemic. After the COVID, this pandemic is really something which is significant. Loneliness. People are lonely. 80% and above are lonely. And look at this study which was done. And when I read this research, I was feeling very bad, terrible the entire day after reading the research. The research was done There were two groups of people which were taken, men and women. And roughly, I think it was over 10,000 people. So very, very robust trial. And I love America for that, they do it properly. So then in this experiment, the experimenter said to the group that I give you two options. Either you stay alone with yourself for 15 minutes, or I give you micro electric currents of 70 millivolts for 1 minute. Which one would you choose?
They must have chosen the second one.
They chose the second one. They chose the electric current. They didn't want to stay with themselves for 15 minutes. Terrible, exactly. The same, I had a sinking feeling. I said, oh my God, what is happening? And between the men and women, we thought there would be a significant difference. There was no significant difference, Women were slightly better. They wanted to still stay lonely, but men, no. So if we are not able to spend time with ourselves...
Correct. We're in bad company.
Exactly. We are in super bad company. And then we expect others to get joy from us.
Correct.
Because we can't live with ourselves. Where is the question of other people, having joy from us? So coming back to, it still, shakes and moves me that what are we doing to ourselves? So your social connections. So there was a scientist called Dunbar. Very nice, interesting experiments he did with chimpanzees. So if a chimpanzee's brain is there, and then what is the company that the chimpanzee is keeping? Based on that company of the 5 nearest chimpanzees, the brain development was decided. So exactly the same thing applies for you and me. Who are the 5 people with which you constantly communicate? संगति, बिल्कुल. और स काफी मुझे अच्छे भी लगते हैं. एक होता है सत्संग, फिर होता है सतग्रंथ का ये, फिर होता है स्वाध्याय, सेवा और संग. So who are you actually in with? Which is the company that you're keeping? Those 5 people decide your life. Are you getting motivated? Are you getting rejected? Is there criticism? Who are you drawing the inspiration from? Now, interestingly, Facebook, I think it was Facebook and then a couple of other companies also. So what Dunbar said was 5 and then multiples of 10. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 like that. The brain capacity to interact maximum is 150 for the lifetime. I can connect to 150 people in my lifetime, not virtually. By the way, now in the virtual world, all the equations have become different, not virtually. Connection physically up to 150 people in the lifetime. So that's why, in one of the offices, they have kept only 150 employees, saying that, that would be the core, and then that's how they connect. And so they can know each other, basically.
So this means 150 individuals, I can get to know them,
yes,
be involved with
correct.
them.
Lifetime, in a lifetime.
Completely, be completely involved with them.
Yes,
it can't be more than 150?
No, that's what he said, that's the maximum capacity with which your cognition is interlinked, which is very interesting for me because forget the 150, even these 5 are not real and close enough, where we draw the inspiration. So what happens? Your social connections are deciding how your brain is functioning. Your social connections are feeding you the food for the thought. A very simple example, you stay with negative people for 5 to 10 minutes, automatically your positive thinking shifts to negative. And just the reverse. So the influence, and this is what we call mirror neurons. Now mirror neurons also is very interesting to study, some people, in the good old days, we used to have these festivals which we celebrate, and there would be dance and there would be so many things. I'm still a big fan of that ancient wisdom. We should keep it alive. And it should not be virtual. It should be real. It should be in people. It should be in person. So when they would watch these dance shows and all, when the dancer is dancing, there is brain changes which is happening. Exactly the same changes are happening to me when I'm watching that dancer.
Really?
Yeah, in a live show. When the person is playing the music, let's say sitar is being played, that brain's functioning is exactly mirroring in my brain. Look at the potential of my brain growth when I attend these shows, when I'm doing it live.
What about watching a movie?
Not on the screen, because the screen is giving you the idling rhythm.
Theatre. Being a theatre.
Same. Because screen, कोई भी screen ले लो आप, छोटे से बड़ा screen ले लो, वो एक idling rhythm देता है. So that is the significance of mirror neurons. That when I'm watching something, I'm also developing. That's why multisensory stimulation, mirror neuron system, being with people who are serving you, who are interacting with you, you're learning from them, who is influencing you, is so important for memory. So MEMORY for a good memory.
Superb. Rapid fire. Brain rapid fire to the brain doctor. The first is, what is the one brain hack for success?
So there was one technique which I practiced and I just did once. I took a deep breath and I just did what is also called humming bee technique or Brahmari. And very, very simple. There's no need to do any mudras or nothing because I was not aware. All I did was I just did the deep breathe and then I just did this humming sound and automatically the gamma was formed.
Can you show us the humming
Yes.
sound?
You take a nice deep breath. If you want, you can do the Shanmukhi mudra. You can close your eyes. You can close the tragus. But I'm just going to do the simple mudra. You take a deep breath and then you say, You try to go as long as possible. And this one single Brahmari led to form the gamma. So just once.
For how long?
That's it, what I did just now. It was roughly, I think, 22
few
seconds,
seconds,
and that was enough to produce that gamma.
Superb.
Once you produce that gamma over and over and over and over again, which means you practice every day, even 3 times Brahmari. Forget quantity. I'm a big quality person that you just do it properly, you do it once in your entire daily life and that's enough, So keep doing that, you produce gamma. Once you have gamma, automatically you'll stall the brain's age. All your questions of reversing the brain age, everything will be done with that gamma. I think I saved the best for the last.
Yeah, you did. Superb.
So that's the one hack.
When you were doing this, I felt my anahata, the heart chakra, suddenly get activated.
Beautiful.
When you were doing that. So I just had a pet communicator in the last podcast when I was in Bombay, and she said, the bees, a lot of beekeepers have very strong hearts.
Absolutely. Yeah, because they communicate like that,
Yeah.
Beautiful. I think you validated exactly that thing, what is being said. Lovely.
Okay. One brain hack for stress, what would that be?
See, we have talked about the stress, but let's say, you're in a busy office practice and then you are too much, you have to just get yourself to do some work and you feel stressed. Watch your breathing. It'll be very fast. Your heart rate will be very fast. The easiest hack is just sit straight. Do diaphragmatic breathing. Don't do a shallow breathing. Just take a very deep breath. Simple deep breath. And then a simple exhale in the proportion of 1:2. Very quickly, the vagus nerve will come out. Or splash cold water. The moment you splash cold water, the vagus nerve will be activated. Or right here on the side of the neck, there is a vagus nerve which goes very gently. So that's why, when we are tired, why do we do all this? This is a very common practice. I'm tired, because you are actually, by that procedure, you're activating the vagus nerve. Once you get the vagus nerve, parasympathetic, you feel calm and stress is out.
Okay. So the first one that you said was your exhalation has to be longer than the inhalation.
1:2.
1:2.
Deep breath, hold little bit and then 2
So
of
one
exhalation.
I'm just simplifying it for the viewers.
Yeah.
1 is inhalation, 2 will
is
be
exhalation.
Exhalation always has to be longer.
Absolutely.
Splashing cold water and
simple splashing of cold water and then this little technique. Do it one by one. If it's better that one after the other is stimulated.
Okay. Inhalation, exhalation for how long?
As long as you can, as deep as you can, because then you will bring the diaphragm.
So full inhalation,
full inhalation and full exhalation.
But many a times the exhalation, complete exhalation is shorter than complete inhalation.
No, that's what you have to consciously do that,
Okay. All right.
Hi, this is Dr. Sweta Adatia, and we had the opportunity to examine the brain of Shloka Joshi. Now, when I say examine the brain, what are we seeing? We are doing a very simple test called electroencephalogram. How we have EKG for the heart, we have EEG for the brain. When we examine the EEG of the brain, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes for the examination. We take that raw data, we process it through special softwares, and from the wellness perspective, we bring out elements which are greatly helpful for understanding the processing speed, cognition, mood, executive functions, the balance between the right and the left, the functioning of the frontal cortex between the right and the left, the anterior and the posterior, and each of the brain waves. What is the strength of the brain wave? What is the amplitude? When I say strength is amplitude, and then how are they placed? Largely, people should have beta in the front. Now, a lot of anxious people have a lot of beta. That was not the case with Shloka. Also, you have posteriorly alpha. When I close my eyes, I generate a slow alpha. And this alpha is very possibly to be found when you are changing the state, when you're closing the eyes. For Shloka, we did see that to happen. People who cannot produce this alpha are the people who feel stressed, are the people who cannot feel relaxed and calm. Also, theta, as you go a little deeper, is theta. Just before you go to sleep, generally we find a lot of theta. There are people, for example, Shloka is one such person who can produce theta, a large amplitude theta in the resting state as well. It indicates general quality of relaxation, feeling calm, feeling at ease. That is the time when creativity also comes in, abstract thinking, processes which are new in nature, some things where she can be, for example, when we had a talk with her, she's a great creator. So she can create images, she can write certain characters, etc. All that is driven from theta. And when we fall asleep, that's delta. Obviously, there was not much of delta as we expect in the awake and resting state for her. Now, after this, we do see the symmetry between the left and the right, which was very well seen in her case. Now, this symmetry is extremely important of alpha, because the moment you have more alpha kicking in the front, in the right side, which means you're likely to be restless, a little agitated. And if it kicks more on the left, you're likely to be lethargic, lack of motivation. This balance is the key. So all these 15 parameters help us to understand whether the person is able to relax, able to focus better, have great attention. Oftentimes, like her brain, a lot of excessive theta can also give rise to inattention. So we do then further categorize what can we do in terms of that attention and mark out as a study which can then be linearly and longitudinally studied.
Most peak performers studied at the lab have been amazing brains, leaders, athletes, some top professionals, people from the fields who have changed certain amazing things, made we incorporate humanity, social structures. So when we study these people, these are the inspirations. In fact, Shloka is also one such inspiration, where she can do all the creative tasks that she has been doing, all the yogic practices, which has helped her brain to sort of shape into a process where there is less of stress, more of relaxation, good calmness, and then just the right amount of the brain waves that you need. Yes, we do suggest all kinds of exercises. We do suggest certain cognitive supplements, nootropics, what we called for all of you if you do the exact same examination. So at the lab, we bring in this kind of innovation so that your brain can live 100 years and all of us can have a happy and a healthy life. Signing off, Dr. Sweta Adatia.
So, yeah, thank you so much for this conversation. And as I was mentioning to you, that there are very few people who can, I mean, to me at least, that I can sort of, engage with everything that they're saying. And this entire podcast felt like I was in a trance. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you to all the listeners, viewers. Absolute humblest of the gratitude. Whenever we started the lab, people said, well, you can write a lot of papers and then put it into the scientific journals. I said, no, I want to go grassroots. Let's help the humanity grow, evolve. Are we the human beings in the spiritual existence, or are we the spiritual beings in the human existence?
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed watching this content, you can watch the full in-depth video on the Body to Being podcast hosted on Shloka YouTube channel. To continue watching shorter pieces of this content, you can subscribe to Shloka Clips on YouTube. Don't forget to like this video and follow us on Spotify. Pranam.
In case you'd like to be a part of our online and in-person yoga, diet and spiritual programs, you can join our WhatsApp group below, where we post all our upcoming programs and give free tips on health, diet and lifestyle.